Daffodil International University would be about knowing how those pathways work. Areas are constantly changing because our labour market is changing.
Hello viewers, welcome to this special program on Campus TV of Daffodil International University. We are here to observe International Migrants Day 2024, which is worldwide observed 18th December every year. And we are extremely privileged and honored to have with us Her Excellency Ms. Nardia Simpson, Acting High Commissioner, Australian High Commission in Bangladesh. Hello and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
I would like to start the talk with you from a different perspective. We have thousands of Bangladeshi students whose favorite destination is Australia in terms of having higher studies. So what's your take on that? How do you see, or do you have any special suggestion for our potential students?
That's a great question and a wonderful place to start. I think education is a very important part of the migration story, both in terms of temporary migration, going to Australia and getting a world-class qualification that we like to say is a passport to the world. But also education is a way to build those people-to-people links between countries, which makes the world that little bit closer. So from the Australian government perspective, one statistic I often talk about is the fact that Australia has 42 universities. And of those 42 universities, 28 are in the top 500. So you know that when you're going to Australia, that you are going to get a world-class education. Our education institutes are very highly regulated and of excellent quality. And in addition to going to an excellent institution there, whether that's in tertiary education, such as people at Daffodil International University might be interested in doing further education in master's, PhD, and what have you, but also for technical and vocational education and training. So in areas such as healthcare or construction, electricians, plumbers, that
So
type
a lot
of
of skill development opportunities.
A lot of skill development opportunities. And we found earlier this year, we had the visit by Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong. That was the first purely bilateral visit by an Australian Foreign Minister in 26 years. And in those conversations that we had across government, one of the things that the government kept asking about was skills development. And so we're contributing a lot to skills development within Bangladesh. And that's also because we have such a great reputation in this area. So given that this is a podcast celebrating International Migrants Day, one of the key messages for your audience here at Daffodil International University would be about knowing how those pathways work.
Exactly.
And using credible resources to understand how those migration pathways work. They are definitely there. But the best form of information is through government information that explains those areas that people might be interested in, and to make sure that you engage with reputable services.
Okay. That brings us to the next question. What is the need in the labor market of Australia if people are willing to go for skilled migration, or people develop their skills and then they want to stay there for particular work? What areas do they need to focus on?
Yeah. So areas are constantly changing because our labour market is changing. So the ways in which we like to enhance our labour market to make sure that our economy keeps its competitiveness is through skills development within Australia. So sort of using government mechanisms to target, say, apprenticeships in certain areas for those that already have the lawful right to live in Australia. Then we also look in terms of the migration aspects, which are particular for the viewers here today. We advertise, or we have a list on our government websites that goes through which areas are in particular demand. Those areas at the moment include things such as technology or education, also construction, engineers, and so on. One thing I wanted to point out, though, is that some of our migration pathways are only open to specific countries. So we don't have a labour agreement with Bangladesh. in the same way that we have, say, a labour agreement with islands, with countries in the Pacific. So our Pacific Island neighbours, we have certain arrangements there for things that are a little bit lower skilled in terms of things like agricultural workers, fruit picking, that type of thing. We've seen that those type of migration pathways are being misused by traffickers, saying you as a Bangladeshi can go to Australia and work on farms. It's not really the way it works. So you have to be also, when you look at what Australia is looking for, you have to look, what is Australia looking for? And is there something special where it's only targeting certain countries? And hopefully, maybe sometime in the future, we'll have something like that with Bangladesh, but we don't have that now.
Okay, so the ideal situation for any workers would be to just look out for information in the right places and recheck.
It would be to recheck, but for your audience being students at the university, go through those reputable education providers. Just last week, I met with all the education providers, like I guess they're facilitating education, inward-bound education into Australia. So I met a whole number of representatives from those areas. They know everything about migration, not migration, but in terms of skills development within Australia. And so they'll be able to tell you how to apply for courses, that type of thing. In terms of migration to Australia, look for a registered migration agent, but don't go down the path of trying to go down routes. If it looks too easy, it probably is. And as I said earlier this morning, one of the awful challenges with migration is that once you do something irregular, whether it's overstaying a tourist visa, whether it's working on a tourist visa, that goes into a system, and it will always come up again every time you apply for a visa, and we also share that information.
That will create problems in future.
It'll create problems. It looks really simple, but it's just stick to the rules, and there are pathways there.
Exactly. So even though you mentioned that there is no such agreement in terms of skilled migration, but my question would be, how can international partnership between Australia and Bangladesh can contribute to the effectiveness of migration initiatives?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, in terms of not being there's not a specific arrangement between Australia and Bangladesh, but Australia is open. So it's just that there's not something particularly special in terms of an arrangement between Bangladesh and Australia that specifically targets certain skills, as it might between Australia and other countries. So there's still a range of options open there. Where we see the collaboration and complementariness between Bangladesh and Australia in migration is the fact that we have very strong people-to-people links. We are so close in the Indo-Pacific. You know, we share an ocean, we share a region, we share a lot of rich history. So the first migrants to Australia were actually seafarers in the 19th century from Bangladesh.
Oh, wow!
I think they came from Sylhet, and they travelled down Australia on some of the ships there. So we have a rich history of migration, and at the moment there's around 80,000 people of Bangladeshi origin in Australia, according to the Bangladesh government. And so there's complementariness in our economies and in our education systems. We have, when we look at what subjects people are studying in Australia, is that they often study a lot of IT. And that's an area where Australia also has migration needs. And so in terms of the complementariness between the countries and how those migration pathways might work, it really is about our governments and our universities collaborating together to work out how can we draw the best from each. You know, so there might be options in Australia and options in Bangladesh that we can help bring together. to, I guess, help develop both our economies. And one of the areas that Australia has a very strong history in research and development, and one of the things your viewers, I'm imagining how they might be listening to this podcast, is that it was Australians who invented the Wi-Fi. So we really have a lot of cutting edge technology, and so for those that are interested in those areas, there is a place for you. That's one of the things, is the complementariness between our economies and our peoples. The second thing I'd like to raise would be the issue around irregular migration and safe and regular migration. So as we all want to promote safe and regular migration, and one of the ways in which we promote safe and regular migration is by, at the same time, combating irregular migration. So whilst this might not directly affect your viewers here today, is that the Australian government and the Bangladesh government work very closely on irregular migration and making sure that we work together to prevent irregular migration. And those areas around working together on the prevention and combating of irregular migration also helps to develop an understanding and a relationship between the two countries that looks at migration through a far more positive prism, the holistic prism of how do you combat irregular migration, which then boosts the acceptance of regular migration. So the two go hand in hand, and so we need to do both and work together on both of that.
Exactly. So we have heard stories, we have sometimes watched videos about migrants facing difficult situations in the host country. So how can the perceptions about migrants be improved to ensure a more inclusive society?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'd just like to turn it slightly. Because when we often think about migrants, people think of themselves, or the viewers might think of themselves, I want to migrate to study in Australia, temporarily to Australia to study. I want to migrate permanently to the US or to Europe. So you think of yourself as a migrant, and then you think of yourself and your experience, or the videos you might see of unfortunate things that happen in the country. Now, if I were to turn that on its head and imagine a country like Bangladesh or another country, Bangladesh is host to many migrants who come here. And how do you, or how do your viewers, as the host country for those migrants, how do you think they might feel about certain interactions that happen when they come to Bangladesh? I'm pointing that out because we can tend to look through migration in just from our own perspective.
Yeah.
So as I'd said before, we need to think holistically about migration, and we need to think about regular migration as the positive aspects of regular migration and support those, whilst at the same time focusing on the negative aspects of migration, such as irregular migration, human trafficking, people smuggling, and so on, and look at it together as a complete picture. In the same way, when we think about a migrant's experience, we need to think of ourselves being a migrant and think, what experiences might I face in a host country that I'm migrating to, and how do I feel when things happen, such as the ones you said you saw on television. But at the same time, we all need to think about how can I be a good host for a migrant, for migrants in my country. So it goes both ways.
Yes.
So I think that's the first thing at the outset. So what I'm going to say next about what Australia is doing in terms of being a great host country for migrants, I would encourage all the viewers of your podcast to be thinking about how they might be able to be better hosts for migrants in their own country or wherever they might be.
Exactly. Like we have the issue of Rohingya, which you are definitely aware of. And as you were saying, I was like looking inside me and thinking about how, we are treating them and all that. So very interesting take on this. Okay, so this is your first time in Daffodil International University's Green Campus. So how's your experience so far?
Well, I can't believe it's taken me 4 years to come here. I feel like I'm finding this hidden gem because it's just outside of Dhaka. But it's a really beautiful campus. I think I heard it referred to as having a green mattress.
Exactly.
So it's really lovely and open. And we're here in the moment, at this point in time, there's a lot of exams going on, so you can see sort of a great, vibrant atmosphere. And I think complementing that is, and talking to the faculty here, is that they have such an emphasis on the quality of education as well. So, which is absolutely wonderful for the students, and then also for countries like Australia, where hopefully we're again hoping that you come for further education and studies.
We actually hosted Australian students this
year.
Yes,
I heard about that from Swinburne University.
Yes. Yeah. Now, I think we are almost towards the end of our discussion, but on a lighter note, I know for sure that you have been here in Bangladesh for the last 4 years. I would want you to comment one positive aspect and one negative aspect about your living experience.
About my living experience in Bangladesh. It's really hard. It's hard to narrow it down to one positive aspect. For those that know me well, I think that one of the, can I say more than one positive aspect?
Of course, go ahead.
There's just it's been such a rich experience, and if I might say, Bangladesh has been a wonderful host for me and my family these past 4 years. So some of the positive aspects on a I guess a more personal level is I really love Bangladeshi sweets. So I have explored sweets across the country, and so that's something that I would take with me. But on a more serious note, I think the positive things about living in Bangladesh for the past 4 years have been really to develop those people-to-people links. You can't understand another country or another culture unless you live in it for some time. And you sort of have a learning curve where you know nothing, then you think you know everything, then you realize you know less than nothing. And I think that experience of the warmth of the Bangladeshi people and the richness of the culture, and I might say the richness of the cultures, because there's more than one Bangladeshi culture. And so that's what I'd say is the positive aspect. The negative aspect, I think the negative aspect, I would say, is that Bangladesh is just a little bit too far away from Australia at this point in time. We hope at some stage in the future we have a direct flight between Bangladesh and Australia. But at this stage, it takes a long time. Like you have to go via a third country and then to Australia. So I'm looking forward to an opportunity sometime in the future when there's enough demand between Australia and Bangladesh, both in terms of our trade and cargo and people-to-people links, that we end up having direct flights between Australia and Bangladesh. And then I'm imagining it would probably be around 14 hours or even less between
That would be
Sydney
actually great for
and
us.
Dhaka. So hopefully that will happen, and then I'll be back on that flight to come and visit all the friends that I've made here.
Oh, that's really positive, and we hope that happens. Thank you. We had spent a beautiful time with you. Thank you for sparing your precious time. I know you must be very busy, and I am sure that our students, our viewers will benefit much from this podcast. Viewers, I hope you listened to the discussion and benefited. And if you have any question, comment, or suggestion, you can drop in the comment box. We will definitely get back to you. Thank you for watching and staying with Campus TV of Daffodil International University. Goodbye.